combined meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee and the Burlington School Committee of December 12th, 2024. The public can also access this meeting via WebEx. The Burlington High School Building Committee will hear public comments in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on BCAT, and video audio recordings are being made. This meeting of the Burlington High School Building Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. If you are participating remotely, please identify yourself by typing your name on the screen in advance and verbally once you're identified to speak. We request that you please turn on your camera, and comments and statements are limited to 3 minutes. We stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for November 14th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a vote. Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Jeremy's out. Ms. Novojek?
Yes.
Melissa Massardo?
Yes.
And Eric Conti?
Yes.
Lisa Chen?
Yes.
Joe Adubato?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Nicole Kasha?
Yes.
Bob Kuna?
Yes.
Doug Davidson? He said he may not be able to answer, so I'm just going to...
He wasn't here anyway. He'd abstain.
He's on the phone.
He's on the phone. He just said he was going to have trouble responding tonight because he's double dutying. Neil?
Yes.
He wasn't here at that meeting.
Okay. Gail Pinkham?
Yes.
Martha Simon?
Yes.
And Mark Sullivan?
Yes.
And the chair is a yes. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 0, 0. Okay. And the next item up is invoices. And I'm going to go ahead and let Chris take over for the invoices since the school committee needs to approve those.
I move that we approve the TAPE amendment number 1 in the amount of $13,200.
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So this first one is a commitment, and then the 2 invoices follow.
Okay.
So this is a commitment. We've talked about this, doing the ANRAD that we did to delineate the wetlands. That's an amendment to their contract. You'll remember that part of the $1.5 million that was allocated, we have $100,000. That's the owner funds, and you can see that on this slide here. This is a commitment for $13,200 to complete that work. So this will get invoiced. It's actually part of their invoice that you're about to approve for half of the amount that it's actually a hearing tonight to complete that process. So it's a commitment now, and then it'll be part of the invoice. So you were saying invoices, and I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so the first things we don't need to really vote on, but we do on the 2.
This is the commitment here, and we've signed it, or TAPE signed it. It'll go to Nicole. She'll sign it.
Okay. So the question is, do we need to vote on the
Yes.
commitment or just on the
You
invoice?
do have to vote on a commitment.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, go ahead, Melissa, make the motion.
Okay, I think TAPE amendment number 1 in the amount of $13,200.
Second. Okay.
And pointing out that this is a vote to make a commitment, not to...
Yeah, it's an amendment, contract amendment number 1.
Okay. Not to pay a bill, but to make the amendment. All right. School committee members are all here, not online, right?
Correct.
Okay, so all those in favor of this commitment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's just do a roll call anyway. Melissa?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Megan?
Yes.
Chair votes aye, 400.
And we'll go ahead, we'll go to the invoice.
I move that we approve the Doran Whittier invoice number 13 in the amount of $18,000.
Second.
And any discussion? Oh, it's you.
Any questions, any comments on this? Hearing none, all those in favor. Melissa?
Aye.
Megan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 400.
Move that we approve TAPE invoice number 241109 in the amount of $34,461.
Second.
Thank you.
Any questions, any discussion? Hearing none. Melissa?
Chair,
Aye.
Chair, Nicole has her hand raised.
Oh, Nicole, go.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask, in the actual backup, the Doran Whittier invoice is a invoice number 1. So you guys approved a number 13, which would be the next invoice, but in the actual backup, it's just, we were only provided number 1. I just want to make sure that Doran
The
Whittier can
contract
get me.
amendment is number 1, but the
Invoice
invoice
13.
says 13.
Nicole, we need to understand what you're telling us. Did we screw something up?
No, not you, just in the actual attachment that Doran Whittier provides for this meeting,
I'm looking,
It's-
oh, maybe I have it.
invoice number 1.
It's invoice number 1?
The invoice I'm looking at, Nicole, says invoice number 13, the one on the screen.
Yeah.
Right, on the slide, it's correct, but the actual invoice in the backup, the links, like in the attachments for this meeting.
You're saying the way it's
Or not correct.
labeled?
Okay, well, we'll check that. I can assure you.
It's
that
an old
this is
invoice, that's
number
all.
13.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
Right.
They labeled it wrong.
okay. So all those in favor?
Yep.
Melissa?
Invoice, yeah, the TAPE invoice, aye.
Melissa voted aye. Megan?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Chair votes aye, 400.
Okay. Got that over with. All right. And next item up is any public comment. Anybody out in the audience for public comment?
You're ready to do this when we get to it, right?
Yes, yep.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Joanne Frustacci, Precinct 3 Town Meeting member, mother of a BHS alum, and I never imagined I'd be at this mic again, and I bet neither did
Joanne,
any-
can you speak up a little? We can't hear you
Oh,
very
you're
well.
kidding. Wow. Don't know the mic.
I was having the same problem. I it was me.
No, it's not you.
Sorry, Joanne, please
That's
go on.
okay. No, thanks
You
for...
can start, you may start over if you'd like.
No problem. Joanne Frustacci, Precinct 3 Town Meeting member, a butter, and mother of a BHS alum class of, I don't know, 2000-something, 17.
A while ago.
So I never imagined I'd be at this mic again, and I bet neither did any of you. So we are the neighbors next door, and we appreciated how respectful and patient you all were with the Fox Hill abutters. We certainly trust and expect that will continue. So we're here in good faith to tell you what we're thinking about. The high school is a good neighbor. Students are very polite and respectful, and this building is like a soundproof fortress, which causes no noise, actually. That said, we can't say the same for the varsity field. And we respectfully request that relocating varsity field back here to this area be taken off the table. The backyards and the front yards of a lot of residential streets, Arlington Street, Sunset, Valley Circle, Shady Lane, Indian Hill, Teresa, Mildred, and Barbara. All of those streets and houses surround both backyard facing here and front porch facing here. So, and then the other thing I just wanted to mention is I heard briefly before the meeting the idea of sound barriers. And I just want to say that if you think you need to put sound barriers around this building that looks like a prison, that is going to look like a prison. And if you have to put sound barriers or contemplate sound barriers, then I think that you're trying to squeeze something in a spot it shouldn't be in a residential neighborhood. But anyway, and also just ask if you keep in mind, which you can't forget the wetlands, of course, that the houses along the wetlands, on these streets that I mentioned, have spent considerable sums, and I mean tens of thousands of dollars, not just a few $1,000s, on water mitigation due to flooding. So we are going to have concerns always about flooding if or when this area is excavated for anything. Let's see. Oh, and I just thought the corporate drive site was a very appealing and interesting thing, because it would be a kind of a flagship school with like all those state-of-the-art science labs, and we are a high-tech town. And to compliment Dr. Chen, she's made an enormous impact, I think, on the quality of education here already. Wish I knew her 15 years ago, and I'd love to see what she could do with an innovative setting like that. I have spoken with some other town meeting members, and one, Dan Rasky, couldn't be here tonight, but he asked me to relay to you that he would love to know the cost of demolition of the parts of the high school that will need to be demolished, and also to break out the costs, which I think you're planning to do tonight, right? So in summary, no field here is the bottom line issue for us, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Eileen?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eileen Sickler, 13 Foster Road here in Burlington. And my reason for speaking tonight is to voice my support for having a new high school with the construction in about 2 years. My ask for the committee this evening is to seriously consider 10 Corporate Drive as a viable option, or actually any comparable vacant space. I believe that it's that 10 Corporate is the AR9 model, and just a few comments that I had, a few pluses, I think, that it has, a few advantages. As Joanne said, it offers a high-tech building, wouldn't require an extensive renovation. The construction logistics and timing would not impact the high school operations. Also, I think beside the money, there is value in the student-teacher experience, and I think that this would be the least disruptive in all this. Also, we get to keep the existing expensive sports field that we've sunk a lot of money into in the last few years. And we get to keep all that parking out there, too. And also, lastly, we would not need swing space. I'm not too concerned. I mean, initially I thought, are we going to lose tax revenue? Well, I think at this point, the commercial vacancy rate in town is about 24%. So I don't think that's a big risk. And lastly, I think it's a little crazy, a little upside down to think about N4 and 5, where we tear up the sports field to put the school, and then we build a new sports field where the school was. So I hope that you consider converting our vacant commercial space into, a viable new high school. And then I'd like to thank all of you for all your time. I'm sure it requires a lot of time and effort. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Please come up.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Laurie, Precinct 3, 20 Arlington Road. First, I want to thank Toppy and Doran Whittier for all of your work, along with the school committee. I realize you spent an incredible amount of time coming up with all of these plans. So with that being said, I ask, and I've spoken to the residents, and I have made phone calls, and I have campaigned a lot on this. And the residents on Arlington Road and Sunset and all the surrounding streets here do not wish to have a football field here. Like Joanne said, there are flooding issues. I'm not quite sure where you decided to put the driveway for this, so that's also a main concern for all of us. Where would the driveway go? And I understand, I was at a Christmas party today, and I spoke to someone that graduated in 1980. They told me they used to run up and down the hallways for gym inside when they couldn't go outside, so for the sports. Someone also told me that our field, and my son did go to school and he graduated in 2021, that field is fairly new. So to me, it doesn't make fiscal sense to tear up a field that's basically new. And some may argue, well, in 5 or 6, 7 years, we may have to do it anyways, but we're not there yet. So if you could take that off the table, move in a field here. There's lighting issues, there's noise issues. The wall, the kids have this crazy wall, but for them it's a big thing to put their name on at the end of the year when they graduate, right? Simple things like that mean something significant to others. So for reasons like that, and a sound barrier, because I'm on Arlington Road, so a sound barrier to me would mean you're going to interfere with the woods in between the high school and Arlington Road. And aesthetically speaking, it doesn't make sense. And we have a beautiful, quaint community, Arlington Road, Sunset, and all of these surrounding streets. And we want to keep the charm the way it is. And this is something that I think makes sense for everyone. Corporate Drive is a perfect place. I know people are concerned about how do kids get back and forth for the football field. My thought is you have a shuttle. How do you pay for the shuttle? My thoughts are you charge 2 fees for parking, 1 fee to park here, Corporate Drive, another fee to park at the high school, maybe give preference to the seniors to park on Corporate Drive, and then maybe give the underclassmen the parking over at the high school and charge different fees. With that money coming in, that should be able to accommodate a shuttle. So I think if you want to be innovative, you can be innovative. Obviously, a bridge would be nice. I don't think that's cost effective. Today I was thinking of underground tunnel. I mean, I'm thinking like totally outside of the box, but I think that's where we need to be. This community is an innovative community, and with this special, excellent expertise that you have in this room, I believe you can find a way to accommodate everyone. So again, my ask is to remove the football field from being relocated here. My preference is Corporate Drive. I appreciate your time. I think this is something that is manageable, that all of us can remain happy and continue to thrive in Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Oh, my name's Kevin Batiglio. I live on Valley Circle. On any given day, when school's in session, in the morning, in the afternoon, our street is used as a pickup and a drop-off for high school students. We may have 40 vehicles that park on our street. It's a dead end. The footpath leads over to the gym. My concern is that we become a parking lot for a stadium if it gets built on the other side of the footpath where the gym is. You know, I don't want it to become 400 cars, because it's just not, you know, considerate of the people that live in my neighborhood. I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I understand we need schools, we need a football field, but I just don't want it to be at the expense of our neighborhood. I just hope that you guys are willing to consider that. We're not trying to come in here after the fact, but I don't know if there's more than one plan for the high school that they can take into consideration for the people that live in the neighborhood. And I've been here for 22 years. I love Burlington. My kids went to high school here. It's a great school. I just don't want to become a parking lot for that field year-round. Like, it'd be pretty much year-round if the field's there. At least right now, it's near Cambridge Street. You know, most vehicles access it, the buses going over there. You know, I don't want it to be a pickup and a drop-off area nonstop for my neighborhood, because it would really reduce the quality of our neighborhood. All right, so I just hope that you guys are willing to consider that. I appreciate your time. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say, we don't normally comment, but the plan with that football field is there be an actual parking lot underneath the field, which should take away any issue as far as that.
Yeah, but is the...
I just, you know,
No,
that's
I
part of the plan.
understand.
It's, I know people think that's funny and
No.
silly or whatever.
Well, I
you know,
appreciate
your
your
opinion, but
Is there more than one idea for where the football
there are
field
many
is going?
there are many ideas for
Because
where
I
the
just
high
feel
school
like
is
if you
gonna
put
go.
it where the gym is, it's just...
You can
it's
see the plans. You
okay.
can watch, you can
I'd
look
love
at
to
the
look at
plans,
them.
and they're
Just-
all on the website
Yeah.
as well.
It's just,
So-
I just hope that people realize, you know, that the amount of noise that we would have over there. I understand you need a sports facility, and I just wouldn't want, you know, the speakers in my backyard wearing year-round, they rent it out, whatever. Like, it just would be a lot all the time.
Right. No, thank
That's
you.
what worries me. You know, and I appreciate you listening, and thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online?
Oh, there's a couple more.
No hands raised.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple in here.
Oh, yes.
Hi, my name is Jack Kelly. I'm a town meeting member, Precinct 7. I didn't attend your meeting when you explained some of this stuff, so I had to go online, and it took a lot of time to orient myself and figure out what it was. I understand several of those plans have been already dismissed, and that's good. I've been here in town 55 years, so before this high school was built. So I bring a little bit of history here. And I was among a group of people who said, this is an ugly, ugly building. And they said, yes, but it'll outlast you all. Well, that's not coming to pass. It's less than, what is it, about 50 years old, and we're not getting the 100 years we were promised or expected. Among the things that I've done in my years here is I spent 10 years on Ways and Means, so I had to review school budgets a number of years, and they were the most difficult budget to review. And I spent 17 years in the planning board, so I reviewed buildings. I'm hoping that you're able to decide something that brings value. And I use the word value because the lowest price is not always the best value. So we need to find out what's value. And one of the things that I consider most valuable is don't disrupt the students. And if they have to be in a building where the other half is under construction, not good, which is making me lean to what I've been hearing other people saying, the corporate drive. There's a building that I think has never been occupied. So the inside is an empty pallet, which you can easily design as a building with classrooms. I would hope that the walls you build are soundproof, because when I was touring and talking to teachers over at the Fox Hill, one of the biggest complaints they had was the noise between classrooms. The walls just didn't do it for them. So if you do that type of a thing, or whatever you build, please soundproof the walls so that the students in one classroom are not disturbed by the students in another. I think that's, it may cost a little more to do a fancy wall, but do it wherever you end up building it. I like one of the previous speakers broke up the brought up the parking issue. As you add stuff, if you go the corporate drive thing, that's going to eat up parking space. I still have no idea why parents have to drive their kids to school every day. You spend thousands on buses. And maybe with less parking there, and they can't queue up on Cambridge Street, the police and the state are just not going to let the parents queue their cars up on Cambridge Street. Maybe more of them will take the bus, and if you can come up with some more incentives to do that, take cars off the street, that would be nice. But yes, parking over here at a shuttle bus. Leahy has been using a shuttle bus system for their parking problems for years, and it seems to work fine for them. And they, too, have their people come mostly in shifts. The hospitals run on 3 shifts. So I think the shuttle bus system would be a practical solution. Just how it's funded, not sure. But I'm looking at the corporate drive program as the least disruptive for the students and a financial value, because that building, from what I understand, has never been occupied and is subject to foreclosure pretty soon. So it can be probably purchased without going through eminent domain and any of that tough legal stuff. It's probably for sale at a reasonable price. So I hope, whatever you consider, you'll give a lot of consideration to that one, because I see it as the best value at this point, both for the taxpayer and value for their dollars, and for the students in the minimal disruption of their education, which I think is important. That's our first responsibility, is to the students. So I hope you consider that.
Thank you, Jack. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your comments and your input. It does mean a lot to us. All right. Did you want to come up too, or you're fine? Okay. So the next item is the project schedule.
She didn't touch it.
Watch out, Bobby's coming after you if you move the microphone.
Fair enough. All right, so we are excited to share an update on the project timeline and where we currently stand. So at this stage, we are working on the preferred schematic report, which is the second reporting phase of the feasibility study. The primary objective of the PSR is to evaluate and refine the alternatives and ultimately select a preferred option by mid-March. So this milestone will then transition into the schematic design phase, where a detailed design program will be created. And during this phase, we will establish the project scope, budget, and schedule. The schematic design is planned to run from March through August. That aligns with preparations for the fall town meeting. And on the next slide, you can get a closer look at the timeframes to be expected for each of these phases.
Thank you. Any other, did you want to add
I just
anything to
wanted
it?
to
You have a question, Melissa?
I was looking on the other slide, but trying to find here. We did commit potentially to a February community meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on this one. It wasn't on the last slide. I don't know if it's on this one, but.
It is.
Okay.
It's February. I mean, I think,
Okay.
and we'll get to the community working group, and
Okay.
you can report out as to kind of what
Okay.
we agreed on that.
Okay.
But yes, that is the plan.
Okay. Thank you. The next item is the PDP cost comparison.
It should be non-high school programming.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I skipped one. Yep, the non-high school programming, sorry.
And Bob, can you hear me all right? Am I good where I'm sitting?
Yeah.
Okay. So coming out of last month's meeting, as well as, I think this has come up pretty much every meeting, comes down to the fact that we have a high school building project, and we have a lot of non-high school related programming that is presently in the high school. And the question that I have put at the top of that slide is, should the high school building project account for non-high school programming? And I think we are at a juncture now where, in my opinion, having been with this group for a year and listening to everybody, the answer to that question is kind of a definitive yes. And it's not a matter of if it's in, it's where does it go, and do we account for it financially as part of this project? And for those that are unaware, like in an MSBA project, a lot of these things would be excluded. You wouldn't be precluded from funding them, but you wouldn't receive any reimbursement for it. And so in this building, you will see the guys have broken out these 7 different programs that are presently in the building. So Central Admin, BECC, BPS Tech, BCAT, the Science Center, District Maintenance, and the lab classrooms. And you should have received in your meeting materials, and it's also attached to this 4-page document that basically details each of those programs and how they function in this building and what their function is. And I think critically, there's a column here that says, is it educationally integrated into the high school? And having spent a fair bit of time looking at this, our interpretation and working with a lot of folks on this is that when it comes to the majority of them, the answer is no. That doesn't mean that they're not critical. It means they're not part of the high school function. The one exception that I have to that is the lab classrooms. Those are distinct classrooms within the space, and we would expect to include those in the high school solution, whatever that is. The other piece is the Science Center, and I think we can discuss that. But I'm going to pause there because I would like the committee's sort of view and potentially even a vote as to should the high school building project account for non-high school programming, and get guidance on that, because that will help the design team and ourselves define the box from a space perspective, because we need that.
Ms. Massardo?
I appreciate that you clarified the yes versus the no vote here. For my clarification, right now, what we're trying to decide is, like, should we figure out what to do with these programs? Not necessarily do they need to be in the high school or
Correct.
not. It's just, should we figure out what, when, and how they will be addressed, or versus say we're not talking about them and send them off to town meeting? Those are the two.
That it's not the purview of this building committee to account for the solutions for those programs.
Okay.
That's the simple
Okay.
question. And my interpretation, or our interpretation, based on what we've heard, seen, is that all of those functions are critical, and if we renovate this building, all of that space would get renovated as well. If we build something entirely separate, but we don't bring those functions along, well, then we have to do something with this building as part of that. And so it's just confirming that is what we need to do, because that just helps us define the space with whatever option we move towards.
Ms. Massardo?
Okay, my opinion is I believe we should vote yes here, and that we should have a plan for these 7 programs. Whether or not we include them in the building or on the exact same time frame, et cetera, is still to be determined. But I think we should have at least a dollar value and a plan for, okay, this can go next and this can wait, et cetera. But we should at least know how much that will cost, when that might happen, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. Go ahead.
Well, I'll go with Megan.
I have a question about the BECC. When my children were there were high school students that volunteered in the BECC. And so to me, that does make it important for it to be with the high school, because it gives students an opportunity who are interested in pursuing early childhood education in college to volunteer their time or intern, so to speak, in the preschool. I know we have a preschool, I think we have a preschool teacher still here, and I'm not sure if that still happens. Maybe Dr. Conti, you could answer that question.
There's, and Mr. Sullivan's online too, there's an early childhood class that is held right above the BECC, and so the students are often more associated with the high school class than they are technically with the BECC, but they use the same facilities. We have had some of those students sort of come down in, but I would say that the BCC, the Early Childhood Center, is more self-contained. Obviously, the high school early childhood class is for the high school students, and we do have some 3- and 4-year-olds who from town who participate in that class as well. So, Mark, am I getting that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Through the chair, is the program, the other program, is that an integrated program with students with disabilities? You know, are we giving students the opportunity to experience what it might be like to have a position in special education as well? Or are we only then offering the opportunity for students to explore traditional classroom teaching opportunities?
It's an elective program, so there may be students with disabilities there, but we are not servicing IEPs. The teacher who is the teacher of record is a high school licensed teacher, not a teacher who's licensed in early childhood or in special education.
Yeah, Dr. Conti, I think this program is more for the high school students to get experience in the field of early childhood education. It's not so much geared for the students, but more for the high schools to get that experiential classroom experience. So they have the classroom element, and then the little kids come in a few days a week. So it's more about the high school kids than it is running like a preschool that's similar to the BECC, which is an integrated preschool.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, the students are coming to the high school classroom to interact with the students, as opposed to the students going in, our high school students going in and interacting with the BECC students within their educational setting?
Yes.
Okay. So
Correct. There's very little carryover between the two, except for shared outdoor recreation spaces. The staffs will work on different things together, sometimes curriculum and things like that. But the high school students and the students who attend that preschool have very little interaction with the BECC staff and students.
Okay, I guess I disagree with the assessment that the BECC is not an important part of the high school.
Or not, yeah. And Ms. Massaro, looked like you
It was
want to add
relevant
to
to this question. I had asked Dr. Conti, and I don't know if we got an answer, but that preschool program, because I did talk with the teacher about the students that volunteer there, is that just accounted for as a classroom in the new building? I just wanted to make sure that that was, I hadn't seen it. It's just classroom space.
Ms. Massardo, and again, Mark, we did account for the early childhood program as part of the programmatic space study that we did, separate from the BECC.
Right. Okay. And Ms. Monaco?
So relative to what Megan brought up, over the years, various things have come and gone in the relative to preschool. So we used to have a class that was held upstairs in this wing, and kids would come to it like it was a half-day program, and it had nothing to do with the BECC. It was like a prior to that. And then as the BECC developed, that program was phased out, but there were various times when high school kids were assigned to go into the BECC and work there, maybe while it was still the lab program, but prior to right now. But my point is that I consider it an integral part of the high school. I would be totally opposed to having it taken out. I think it belongs as part of the high school. And I think that we all need to be careful to look not just at what we do today, but what we've done in the past and what we might do in the future relative to a lot of these things. So the preschool, the science center, the, what are you calling it here? The tech, the BPS tech. I have a granddaughter in the high school who part-time works at the tech desk. I mean, it's all part of the high school. So I don't think it's reasonable to separate any of these. I mean, maybe you could take district maintenance out, but is there anything else? I think what's happening, and I feel like it's closing in around us a bit, is we're trying to narrow all of this down, and instead we should be broadening it out. All of these pieces over time become important to high schools. So my vote is, except for possibly district maintenance, and I'm not even sure I'd take that out, I think this all belongs as part of the high school.
Thank you. Ms. Simon?
I think I have a lot of thoughts about it, but this conversation is, I think, about that we need to, I don't know if it's exactly the question that Terry asked us. It's about, I think the school committee needs to look at the long term. We have a BECC which meets the needs of our special needs students and some not special needs students in an integrated format. But preschool, in the long term, in the lifetime of this new building project, do we need to provide space in town for preschool? And there's a lot of talk about universal preschool. Where would we put them? If, you know, and I think, so there's that issue. I think that's, but then there's also the issue of where do any of these programs go if they're not part of this project? Then the question is, does this project fund them, or does some other town fiscal thing fund them? So we need central administration, if it's here or if it's somewhere else, but where else? So there's funding, there's space. I think we keep saying how there aren't other spaces in town. Maybe that's not true. I'm interested in exploring. Are there other places to put BCAT? Are there other places to put the Science Center? Doesn't appear to be in any of our other school buildings. Doesn't, you know, for central administration, for the Early Childhood Center, where else would they go? And so I have concerns about that. In terms of what people are talking about, having opportunities for high school students, I don't know that, it sounds to me like the answer was no, the high school students really don't do internships or work in their classrooms as interns with, like, the BECC, that they have their own student population. Ms. Nowalczyk brings up, you know, then they don't get experience working with special needs kids, so that's another internship type experience. We talk about college and career. We talk about kids learning real-life skills. So real-life skills could be about becoming a special ed teacher, not just becoming an early childhood teacher. But those are long-term, big-picture choices that the school district and the school committee should be making. I would definitely include district maintenance. I'm just so disappointed over the years that I taught high school, all the auto shops and carpentry shops that got closed down, and all the students that really benefited from those kinds of experiences. So if we're looking at how do we build a high school, do we want to build a high school that provides our high school students with the most possible career opportunities, we should include all of these things. So I think that that's a big picture question. And I also, and so there's all of that. And then there's, on the town side, I feel like there isn't a lot of space. If we decide we don't need to fit the central administration into this high school project, Where in town would we put central administration? Where in town would we put BECC? Unless we build a new wing on one of our elementary schools. And, this is raising issues about our town and our community and where these things will go. So my general sense is, yes, we should include them all because there's nowhere else for them, and there are some advantages to each of these programs being connected to the high school. It costs a different amount of money. On the way over here tonight, I was thinking, should we propose that there's one funding source for high school and central, all the school, I don't know, maybe, I forget which one, but maybe that the town would take on as a separate funding project one part of this if it's more of a town side, although most of them are school side. So I just think that it's a complicated question, and so I'm in support of including, so this question, non-high school programming, I'm in support of including these things in the new plan. Some of the plans involve a new building plus leaving central administration in this actual physical space where we are now. That might be a great solution because again, I don't think any of us think there's a great space to put these other programs or the BECC in this space, but that wouldn't be adjacent to. So these are a lot of issues. I support including these non-high school programming in this project. But I think that it also involves not just yes or no, it involves making long-term plans as a town, which I don't think we've been great at.
Thank you, Martha. And I'll go with Chris, and then I'll go to you.
I just wanted to add, I pretty much agree with what Martha said about including all these things, which obviously, because I just spent 5 minutes saying it. But I would also like to point out that this is not an MSBA project. So the town is the town, and whether we incorporate these things into this project or whether we don't, which I would oppose, the town is paying for all of this. So, let's do it right, make it happen. We want all these things available to the high school students. So let's just include them, because whether the town decides to buy a building somewhere and move programs into it, we're all going to pay for it. It's one pocketbook. So let's just take the things that are important and put them in this project.
I'm going to have Melissa ask her question, and then we'll...
Yeah, I was just going to say that almost all of the visions that we've seen in all of these options keep this eastern top portion where we are of the high school. And I think that's a good compromise of folks that want to renovate. So we can say, we are being prudent and renovating part of the existing high school after potentially the students have moved out. Also, it's not, we have two other spots for the high school, the football field or across the street. We're not making them materially difficult to get to. The students could still come to the BECC if they wanted that to be their internship, et cetera. I actually really like the BECC in the cafeteria area because it allows us to expand. I couldn't send my kids to the BECC because it's a half-day program. If we had a full-day program there, we could offer more. It's also a lottery, right? I think I'd love to see it expand. And also, I did talk to some parents after the lockdown incident, and they actually don't love being attached to a high school with high school students. So I think that's another consideration. A lot of people in town didn't want kindergartners in a building with 600 students. So I don't know if it's really feasible for us to put 3-year-olds in a building with 900 students that are in high school. So I like that option. But again, I think we're all coalescing around a yes vote on the actual vote for today. So.
Thank you. I think for design and planning, the conversation that we need to understand is, and I just want to kind of refocus and point, if we can, is to say that it feels like everybody's in agreement that the building project, meaning the total project budget, needs to include accommodation for all 7 of these sections that we've listed and the total building space that's needed for the building for the 1,100 students that we've identified. And so, so that being, and you guys can take that up for debate in a second, but I assume that's the way that conversation's going to go. The second part of that conversation, and just to provide a little bit more like pointed conversation towards it, is, you know, we've had some friendly abutters over here, and they want us to consider 10 Corporate Drive heavily. So thinking about 10 Corporate Drive, if that becomes the project that we think about, and it's already not big enough to accommodate the entire high school program alone, so we're going to need to do some additions. What of these 7 programs do we add up the hill? And the project can still accommodate these programs in this building, whatever we decide to do with it. But if that becomes the idea, or something on the varsity field or wherever, if we're building a new high school plant somewhere, what goes with it is important, because the difference between that and not bringing any of it or a part of it is 45,000 square feet. And so that's, I think, what we want to ask is, while the project will still deal with these programs, either by renovation of this building or some other mechanism, we're not abandoning them. What is critical to be actually in the high school plant, which, you know, Chris Mon, you know, you said a lot about that. And so I just want to, if we can think about it in those terms, that would be helpful to us to identify, like, when we show you updated plans, are we showing you updated plans with extra 45,000 square feet in it, or are we just saying those bits are over here and that bit is over there? Like, can you give us some direction on that?
Right, well, Ms. Monaco, go ahead.
I think, personally, my opinion is that most of these, not every one of them, the central administration doesn't need to be, you know, right on top of everything else. But I think most of these things need to be incorporated into the actual high school. And so from my own personal point of view, when we were talking about various options, I was reluctant to let go of one of the plan that added into the circle in front.
Over here, yeah.
Even though I know there was some feeling that it probably would cost as much as a whole new building, et cetera. But one of my reasons for not being willing to let go of that is I think there's a lot to be said for keeping all of these things together. You know, you can't have the tech program in a separate place, and you really don't want to have the science center where the kids can't come down and feed the animals and work. You know, I really wish we could renovate the building we're in, but evidently we can't do that. So that's my 2 cents, is we need it all together.
Anyone online with their hand up or want to question or comment?
No hands.
Beth?
No hands.
All right. Melissa?
I would like to take, who did this? Dr. Conti, did you do this? No. Oh, Tate
So,
did this?
do you want me-
Okay.
Yes.
I can provide some clarity to this. So early on in this process, like many months ago, springtime-ish, we did fact-finding conversations with not all of these groups, but specifically the preschool and BCAT and lab, I believe, and we visited Science Center, and we've done, like, we did some due diligence to find out, how big is your program? If you were included, how big does it need to be? What's the adjacency? So we took some notes on that. And then just recently, we had another call with Bob to sort of get more clarity on what the district or the school feels are the relationships currently. No opinions, no anything, just what is happening right now, and how do those exist today. And so that's why we made this document, is to help you if someone says, well, what is it doing today? We don't even know. That's what we tried to help with this. And this was in no way meant to tell you what you should do in the future or what has happened in the past. It's just like, as a snapshot today, this is what, as far as we can tell, what's happening, what the gross square footage is associated with it. And the idea of educational integration is really boils down to, the fundamental question there is, if you took district admin and put it in a vacant office building over there, would it harm the educational offerings of this school? And that's, when we looked at it right now, these are the conclusions we came up with. You can edit that. It's your committee, it's your town. So that's just us doing digging and finding information. So that's how this document was created.
Okay, thank you. Any other?
Do you want a decision tonight on that specific things, or just this yes, no here?
You want to integrate it, yeah, because I don't think we're gonna.
I don't know if we're there yet.
No, we're not there yet, because again, a lot of this
Like some
material.
community input.
Right. And I think we want to kind of digest it a little bit. I mean, I think you've got the gist of,
Yeah, I can.
we don't want any of this not being incorporated in
I
some way.
move that the high school building project should account for non-high school programming.
Right. And that's really what you're trying to get at tonight, Terry, right?
That's the first step.
Right.
That's an accomplishment, so that would be good.
Amend it to say all non-high school programming?
All 7 of these?
All 7? Sure.
Yeah.
The high school building project should
really need
account
to
for
do this,
all
right?
non-high school programming shown.
And you want us to vote on it? Do you feel
As
like
long
we
as-
need to?
I mean, is there general consensus? I mean, I want it to be reflected in the minutes that that's where we decided to go.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important, because, again, Chris references 40,000 square feet of space. In a new space, easy math is that's $40 million. And that's $40 million that the town is then going to bond as part of a new space that has what in our world is not educational programming for a high school.
But it comes down to, too, where I don't think we're ready to make that decision. I mean, yes, we want to incorporate it, but, and you're talking about new space, but a lot of what we're doing is, let's say we go with the across the street. It's not new space. We're going to keep using the space we currently have here with some of these programs. Some may end up across the street, some may stay here. I mean, we have to figure out that plan, right?
So
And so
I think-
the ones that stay here are going to be renovated, they're not going to be brand new. So that's all part of what people, I think, need to, we all have to, that's why we can't make that decision tonight, I think, so I'm trying to say.
I completely understand that. I think what I'm hearing, so I understand that we need to account for it, but I believe what Chris is saying is it needs to be in the space,
Yes.
as opposed to split in any fashion.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Let's say you built a long, skinny building in the student parking lot, which I happen to like long, skinny buildings. I went to high school in one. They were great. Cafeteria at one end, auditorium at the other end. No, gym at the other end. Still there, great private school.
Well, I thought you were talking about here.
Anyway, let's say you build something like that.
Yep.
And we are mere feet from these programs in what's left of this building. That, to me, is close enough that you can go back and forth between the buildings, like the campus effect. So you're looking for a consensus. I don't think we should vote on this, because I think the wording would have to be so specific that it would take too much time to figure out what we're willing to actually vote on.
Right.
But in general, I think you understand that the general consensus is all these things matter, and we want to keep them one way or another. We want to keep them either in the campus site or in the building site.
We don't necessarily want to push them 5 miles away.
Or even across the
And
street.
so I think, and that actually is hugely beneficial, the way you just said that to me, because when you say campus site, when I think of the high school building property, that is the campus.
Right, but you can go between the buildings. You
Yeah.
go out one door and in another, and you're all in the same
Right.
place.
Well, so in the context of the varsity field, that's a quarter of a mile.
Yeah, that could be a problem. That skinny building is looking better all the time.
I agree. I will say that the majority of high school students walk that quarter of a mile every day.
They do, but they don't do it to go feed the animals, before they get on the school bus. And they don't do it to bring the computer down to the IT department because there's a problem, and et cetera.
It's fair.
Is that what this ed tech, I
I think
assumed that was just
BPS,
offices, right?
BPS Tech is different than BHS Tech.
Right.
Help desk. Those are two different things.
So,
Yeah,
so I
okay.
guess what I'd like to say, I don't want to take a vote on it tonight.
Yeah, no,
because
that's fine.
part of
We
it
have
is-
direction as to, we need to account for it.
Right, and again, I think you get the gist. It's something we want to keep as part of what we're considering, but, I think we need to all digest a little more, because we got this all yesterday to look at, and I think people want more time to read into it, and we can ask more questions, but I think in general, we want to keep these programs tied to the high school in some way.
Yep.
All right? Good? Any more questions? All right. So we'll move on from that one, if that's okay?
Yep, so before we hit this slide, PDP cost comparison, because of the timing of when this presentation came out, we had a facilities working group meeting on late Tuesday afternoon to kind of get that group's views on the options and some pros and cons. And so Jeremy's not here, but Bob, can you, and I don't know if you want me to pull up those notes. We have minutes that we'll share, but the time didn't allow it.
Sure, through the chair. So again, these are just some notes. So if we're looking at 10 Corporate Drive, parking was definitely something that we discussed. With an addition, there may not be realistic enough parking for the number of staff and students in the current high school. Not having the field on site or the same site as 10 Corporate Drive could be considered a negative. There are obviously concerns with what would happen with the existing building. Some of the pros of 10 Corporate Drive were nice modern building, sustainable LEED certified, state-of-the-art science labs in speed to occupancy. Some of the cons, again, not enough parking, requires substantial addition, limited green space, adjacencies to private residencies, and difficult site logistics. The varsity field option, again, messaging to abutting neighbors to alleviate concerns, need to provide a better explanation on the qualities of the new field. The plan would give the most flexibility, need updated cost estimate. The website would need to be updated to reflect the current options. Cons would be flex space and moving students around for phasing. That's a con, huh? I think that's in the wrong spot, but again, I'm just looking at these notes. Oh, so again, if we use the varsity field option, yeah, so again, replacement of the HVAC system at the remaining portion of the building would need to be addressed. Displacement of varsity sports for a period of time. We did discuss the option of the middle school field. Again, if we did go to the middle school field, there would be no current locker rooms, no bathroom systems unless they were using the school, no press box, and no PA system. So that would something that would change a varsity field game. Some of the pros, a new building would include an auditorium and a gym. The existing building could become possibly a community center. Opportunities for a second floor to be visible from Cambridge Street with street access. This is again on the varsity field. Can keep the existing upper building for non-educational programs, and then the trees in the existing building could remain. We talked about NC1. So the design would be kind of snaked into the wetlands. Does not feel like an ideal option. There is concern with designing around the wetlands, vetting through conservation, and what further problems would come up as the project develops. Also, the design of the building is oriented poorly for sustainability. Looking at a renovation and addition, ad renos do not give the must-haves. Again, these are just conversations that we had. Will cost about the same as building a new building. The existing building is good enough to keep, but not good enough to renovate, was a conversation that we had. And then second would be the varsity field option. Need to show the option for comparisons, and then we have high school programs that work well in the existing building as is, but the high school program does not. So I know a lot of these may need some follow-up as to what they meant, but these are just notes from our meeting as to, again, yesterday this took place. So.
Thank you, Bob. Terry?
Yeah, so what I've put on this page here really kind of shows all of the options that we kind of narrowed down, and I included the renovation. And I know this was a little more difficult to read previously. What you saw last time were ranges. So if I just take the renovation option, where the total project cost over here, kind of 2/3 away on the right, is $330 million. Right? I think the estimate that we showed you last time was between 300 and 360. So that's just the midpoint. And what I tried to do there was to say, okay, if we take that one as an example, renovating this entire building, which is 360,000 square feet, about 41,000 of that is this non-high school programming. And that just allows you to split out to see what it costs when you break it down between the high school, new, reno and new, and non-high school. And so that's 291 and 38. So that's how you get to that $330 million number. So I'll pause there for a second just to see if that makes sense.
Just want to clarify, we eliminated option R1. It's just there for like a control cost.
Yeah, I think,
like
well,
benchmark.
I just, it's that, and I believe, from what I've heard is folks, maybe not within this commission, but outside say, we'll just renovate the building.
Okay, just
renovate
to show.
the building. And so what we are trying to demonstrate is that renovating the building could conceivably be more expensive than any of the other options.
Right, I think they're,
Disruptive.
right.
And then there's all the pros and cons of what we've talked about, why it was eliminated. Because I just think there's going to be groups of people that are going to come back to that.
Because they feel the shell of this building is like going to be up here for another 200 years. And it's like, yes, it's a good solid building, but, it's what you have to do to make it up to par, for the students and our health and everything else. But yes, Ms. Monaco.
A lot of people in the community are discussing this. So the question I'm going to ask you does not reflect my personal views. It reflects questions I'm getting from other people. And one of the things I'm being asked about why we can't renovate the building, keep the building, just fix it, do the science labs and the HVAC and all of that. One question is this: are there any possibilities of waivers on, say, the streets being too steep and the handicap accessibility? Is it possible to get waivers so that you could renovate the building without having to fix those components that are so major?
No.
Okay.
I would find that extremely unlikely.
Ms. Simon,
I just needed the question answered, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a fairly, it's a known thing when you have an assessed value and then you start to do a certain amount of renovation. Once you exceed that, you need to bring it up to code. And so that's not something that you can apply for a variance.
It's not usually quite as difficult as it is in this building.
It would be difficult.
Ms. Simon, did you? Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring your focus to AR9, just because I know that that's of interest with folks. Now, the building is, I believe, subject to foreclosure shortly, where the lender will effectively take it over. I've included a purchase price of $35 million. That is a kind of market comp for that building. I have no idea if that is even possible, and that would be up to ways and means of the towns. But in order to, I think we got this message last time of if you're going to do that, we need to account for buying the building. And what you'll see in AR9 is that is a high school only. So what we would do across the street would include all of the program in the space summary that equates to about 220,000 square feet. So it requires us to build a sister building effectively on that same site in order to house the 1,100 students, yeah? So I included that, and then I said, okay, well, that means that we need to deal with this building. And Chris, I think you've made that pretty clear to me. And what I assumed here was, okay, well, knowing that it's 35 to 40,000 square feet, we're probably going to demo some of it. I don't know what we're going to do. I put a placeholder in to say, there's 35 million to do that. Is there, has that gone to an estimator? No, because I don't know exactly what we're going to do. But it's a legitimate and reasonable number to carry, and that's how you then get to this 291 number, okay? If folks follow that. I will then point you to NC 5A and 5B. The difference between those is that NC 5B includes approximately 37,000 square feet of what is this non-high school programming, right? And that then demonstrates where you get to this total project cost of $337 million to include all of that in there. In addition to that, right, we then would have to, if we put everything in that building, we'd have to do something with this structure, right? And I don't know exactly what that is, but we would have to do something. 5A assumes that stuff doesn't go there, that we do keep, as you were describing, the east and west wings, and we renovate those to some standard, right? Because, and whether or not the football field was there or not, and don't stab me, whether or not it was there or not, that is the portion of the building that is the biggest problem, from an ADA, a renovation, everything that it doesn't provide us now. So eliminating that would be where I would probably go to anyway, and we could create parks, open space, outdoor learning, like we could do a lot of different things there. And you would then maintain, both with 5A and 5B, you would maintain this wing of the building, you know, and you would also have the gymnasiums if the town wanted them. Yes, we would have to deal with splitting the HVAC system, but all of that's possible. And so what really I wanted you to come away with is recognizing that the project probably starts with a 3. And I know that's a really big number. And what I can tell you is that the estimators that form the basis of this is on the basis of all high schools being built now. And so as a comp that's going on right now down the street in Lexington, they have a school that's designed for 2,400 students. We have about 1,100. Their building is 440,000 square feet. Ours is 220,000 square feet. So effectively, they are a little over 2 times the size of us. Their current estimate is $660 million. So this is not a Burlington-specific estimate. This is what a high school costs in today's market. And so I know that that's a lot. I'll pause and take questions. But I think having it more condensed allows you to follow what goes through our brains.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions? I'm going to go online first. Can put their hands up?
No.
All right. Anyone in the room? I mean, to me, it's clear. I mean, what you put here. So
You've covered a lot.
yeah, you did. Yeah. So I think we've got some good information, basic information.
Yes. You are right. Thank you. You got me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I
Right.
get,
So
Commenting on a typo on 5B?
I'm going to turn it over to Chris right now and David to kind of walk you through what we're doing over the course of the next several months. And this is kind of much more granular to what the project schedule Rachel showed. So, Chris, it's all you.
Yeah, thanks. The big idea here is that when we started the process, we had committed to doing working groups to sort of sort through some granular things, and then the working groups would bring back information and update the committee. And part of that was on display with Bob and the facilities assessment. And, I think in a little bit, we're going to hear from the community outreach, a brief snippet from community outreach. But the idea is that rather than have this group meet in full a whole lot more times, we can work through a lot of the details in working groups and bring those back, and then your group can ask questions to those people. And if the working groups aren't understanding it, then we got more work to do and things like that. So this first sheet here, the designer work plan, is always being updated as we go through the process. But in general, right now, what we're trying to do is give you the data that you need to be comfortable with moving options either forward or not. And so part of that discussion for us is non-ed, where the non-high school components fit, because and obviously we got a good direction tonight. So what we need to do is start working on these options, and the AR9, for example, needs to show an example with just a high school, but it needs to show an example with non-high school functions along with it. And so you can get an evaluation of how each of these options sorts out. There might be 7 versions of each option, so you can see it's almost like a menu. It's a lot of work, and it's going to be overwhelming for some of you, but I think that's probably what you need to be able to decide, all right, that building can exist by itself as a high school, and we'll just take this and renovate or something. I don't know what your decision will be, but and then the hope is that the working groups will be able to sort through some of those details in real time as they're going through. And so this work plan is showing us getting to a PSR date at the end of March. There is a more granular look at, I don't know what slide order we put it in, but maybe, oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so this is showing you what our preliminary agendas, like for the architectural update for our section of the meetings, may look like. Again, subject to change. One of the things we talked about was vote on non-high school programs. You partially did that tonight, and that's great. So we're making progress, right? And so what doesn't happen at a certain meeting, we'll just fold into the next one, and we'll keep working at it until we get to a place where we need to be. So take that with a grain of salt, but this is sort of our work plan on things that you can anticipate coming at what points. And I know we've had some emails about sustainability, and we've had some things like that come across, and this helps identify, okay, they're thinking about it, and they're gonna talk to us at some point, so I don't have to be worried that we're not gonna cover it, but you can anticipate when those things might happen according to this. Terry, if you wanna go to the next one. Let's come back to this one if you want to go to the next slide. So this slide is showing you, I don't know how many diamonds are up there, but it's a lot. And we've already scheduled all of these out. So if you were on a working group, you should have invites for all of these. And it's a lot of work. And so we're rolling up our sleeves. You guys are going to have to roll up your sleeves and join us in this process. But this is the phase where we're going to start uncovering a lot of things. And again, that's the strategy of this committee, and what we've all agreed to is that we kind of go through the working groups and then come back and report to this group on the once monthly meetings. And so this is showing you that at a glance, and some of these dates have already needed to shift, and times will shift, and we'll work together as working groups to make sure we get good representation and people are there and we're making good conversation. We'll take notes at them, and they'll all be available for everybody to kind of reference along the way. So that's the working group strategy. If you want to go back to that. So this is a criteria matrix. The idea behind a criteria matrix is we can put on one big piece of paper all the criteria that go into helping you make a decision. And so the next 4 months are going to be filled with us filling in all of these cells as we go through the process, one topic at a time. And so you can see up at the top that the cells would show up as, if it's not a favorable criteria for that option, or let's, just pick one and say, one of the items is project cost in millions. And so, for some, it may be favorable. Somebody might say anything over $0 is unfavorable. So that's we got to benchmark what we're talking about as far as favorable and not. But the idea is that as we fill this out, these cells are formatted in a way that, like, the number will generate a color. So if you said, I don't want to be committed to a whole number and I want it to be 3.25, the shade of green and orange is going to shade out to be appropriate to 3.25. So then at a glance, we can hold this up or look at it on a screen, and you can kind of see, okay, those options are looking a little bit more green in our favor, and these are looking a little bit more red. That doesn't mean it made your choice for you, but it at least says at a glance, and we've done our homework. There's over 100 items on here that we're going to take you through, so it's comprehensive. If there's something we've missed, please bring that up in your working group sessions, and we'll add it to the list. These topics are also coded by the working group session, so you can look through them and see anytime you see that color row. It says, like the first blue one is programming and learning tech, and so those criteria in that section would sort of primarily be discussed at a programming and learning tech working group, obviously reported back to this committee, and then you guys will be able to, as a group, say, we agree with those rankings or we don't, and we'll adjust them. But you can kind of see the kind of things we're going over as working groups and where the committee's going in the next 4 months. So that's a lot. I can take questions if that's confusing, but we wanted to give you some snapshots on what we're doing. And the team is actually already advancing these 6 options in 3D. So we're starting to, like, extrude the massing. That's when we show you the 3-dimensional version. We've showed you 2D. We start getting a little bit more real with it, like stairs and toilet rooms and things that we haven't shown you before. So we're already doing that. It's just not quite worth bringing it up at this meeting. And then those will become shown more regularly at the working groups, and those will be the basis for conversation. So, to the chair.
Thank you. Martha?
So there's an awful lot of criteria here, and I was looking at the sustainability section where there's 12, 15 items, and I don't know where and when are we going to be putting our criterion, because we have no idea yet. I've heard generally that NC1 is not oriented very well for solar and heat, I forget the word, but it's not oriented well for energy efficiency and reducing carbon footprint. So I don't know how, but I don't know what corporate drive is. I don't know how we can decide unless you tell us what are the factors, what are the pieces that are now showing up as you start designing these, adequately sized spaces. I mean, that's under space utilization. It depends on how you build it, so I don't know. We did this for the Fox Hill project, and I found it very, very unhelpful. The idea is helpful, but how do we make it useful? I guess is my question.
Who wants to, Terry, or do you want to go, Chris?
Chris, where do you want me to go?
So, two things, Martha, is that we're going into detail about all of this in the working groups.
Okay.
So we just need to make sure we're all understanding that the working groups are going to be a bunch of meetings, showed all the diamonds. Different folks are really interested in different things, and that's when we sorted out that a long time ago. And so there's already a bunch of sustainability meetings planned. We actually have at the next meeting a sustainability person coming to this meeting to do overview of general things that apply to sustainability across the board, and then you're going to start looking at the granular sides of those in the working groups. And so the working groups are going to be sorting through some of the fine-tooth bits of this this evaluation matrix to help your colleagues understand the things that they may be more interested in programming and learning tech and less focused on sustainability, but they trust their colleagues that are interested in sustainability to ask the right questions and weed through those things, and us as professionals to bring you the information so that when you're updating each other, you're doing that in a way that's collaborative and sharing information so that when we fill this out, folks are getting a general sense of like, I may not know all of the detail and weeds around sustainability. I wasn't in that meeting, but I can pull up the meeting minutes at any moment that I want to do that. But I can look at a glance and say, well, generally speaking, you know, this option doesn't look as good as this one sustainability-wise. And if I want more detail there, I can look it up.
I was going to say, how I understood what Martha was saying is that, again, this is very helpful, but you kind of touched on it a minute ago before, that when you're in these meetings, you're going to start showing that 3D, what it looks like. Because again, if you can't see it or envision it or look at how it's going to be placed and how the light's going to hit or whatever it is, then how can you assess it, right? That's how I interpreted kind of what Martha was saying, is it's great, but if you can't see it and envision it, then...
So let me give like say a concrete example. If I was looking at Corporate Drive and say the football field, and we wanted to do a geothermal system, well, we're not going to do that across the street because it's already there. But we would do it on the football field if we could, and so that would be, I would think, from a sustainability perspective, the football field from a geothermal well perspective would be favorable. At Corporate Drive, it'd be neutral. So that's kind of how we're going to go through that. I don't know if that's helpful. Many times I say things that aren't, but I'm trying to, like, that's how we're going to kind of go through that. And clearly, with a newer building or a new build, from a sustainability perspective, we're going to be able to achieve much better sustainable goals than just renovating an existing CMU building, right? So I see nods. So does that answer your question a little bit, Martha?
A little bit.
Okay.
We'll see how it plays out, I guess.
Good.
Anyone online? Sorry, Bob. Okay. All right. Anyone else in here? You have a question?
Yes.
Typically, I mean, you're not part of the committee, but
That's okay.
you can come up and talk, because we do want to hear what people have to say. And
We make exceptions for Jack.
And also if it's on the agenda.
I state to hear this because I had such difficulty, because I wasn't at the previous meeting, trying to make sense out of the documents. If I can go back to the non-high school components, the point was made, MSBCA is not involved, so we don't have to follow their rules. And the problem to sell this is you got to sell it to town meeting, and you got to sell it to a 2/3 vote. The non-school components, whether they are incorporated in the high school or remain here, it's clear, you can sell that to each other, what you prefer. Selling it to Ways and Means may be a little bit harder, and selling it to 126 town meeting members may be that much more difficult again. How do you persuade them to see it your way? By giving them some options. And since it doesn't have to be one package, present it to town meeting in components and let them decide. You give them the opportunity to make some of the decisions rather than handing them in as a fait accompli. You're more likely to win most of what you want. You may not get everything you want, but you don't want to put yourself in a position of getting all you want or getting nothing at all.
Right.
So I would consider what you want and how you present it to the people who are going to make the decision. So far, this whole thing has not hit the general public, but when the effects on your tax bill hit them, we, the town meeting members, are going to start hearing a lot more. It hasn't hit there yet, and of course, we're just going to immediately bump it right back to you, and you guys are going to have to come up with the answers.
Responded.
Thank you, Jack.
Not an easy sale. To the issue that Martha just raised about solar and things like that, for most of the value of the solar, it doesn't matter where those solar panels are generating electricity, whether they're over on Corporate Drive or here. They go into the grid and you get a credit and get it back. One of the difficulties, if you tear down the middle of this building, our present zoning bylaws do not allow you to put solar panels on the ground like you see all over the state. So you'd either have to have them raised on some type of a structure, and you don't want to keep the middle of this building just an empty shell to have solar panels. That's not cost effective. You either have to get the zoning changed or find some other way to use them if they're not compatible with the Corporate Drive building, if that's where you go. To your comparison of the Lexington cost, $660 versus half that, $330. Lexington doesn't have the luxury of getting a building at fire sale price. So I think you have to make that adjustment down rather than doing a straight dollar-to-dollar view to
But I think
to our cost. So our cost should be, if you do the Corporate Drive route, should be less than a straight transfer of the Lexington value dollars.
And I think it is. If you look at the numbers closely, it definitely is. I think that number was 271 or 291, sorry. So yes, it is.
Don't throw numbers at me at this point.
I completely take your point. There is absolutely value in being able to purchase an asset that is at a significant discount to what it costs.
It's a fire sale price, and it saves time. Time is money, too.
Yep.
Thank you, Jack. Chris, you wanted to make some comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to Jack, got to keep listening, Jack. So this is a very expensive project, no matter what we do. You can't build a high school for cheap, right? So
without any state money, it's
right.
More dear.
It would be much simpler if we had state money, but we don't. So I think what we're attempting to do at this point is come up with a plan that is acceptable to most people. We're never going to get everybody to love every bit of this, but we need a plan that most people like well enough. And then at town meeting aside.
What number is two-thirds of town meeting? Two-thirds of 126, the important number.
But even before town meeting, it's generally accepted that a project of this size with a tax impact of this amount will have to go to a debt exclusion. So our primary goal.
I think Ways and Means has already bought into the debt exclusion concept rather than an override.
Well,
and Ways and Means does have considerable influence over town meeting.
Well, that's true, but let's just say that 4 selectmen say, we can't put this on the tax bill without a debt exclusion, and all the people in town have to vote. So we go to a ballot, and we get a vote, and hopefully we have a project that is acceptable to the people in town, so they will vote for the debt exclusion, and then it goes to town meeting. But I think what we have to worry about is the whole town.
The debt exclusion have to be one package, or can it be a couple of packages with options on the non-high school components?
Well, that, we're too far away from that.
How you present that package for the selectmen to put on the ballot,
I think we're way too far away from that. Right now, what we have to do is come
but
up
if you
with
can think 12
the
steps
best
ahead, you're
plan.
better off now.
That's true, but right now, we have to look at what's the best high school plan to come up with, and we're, like, as you can see, we're trying, but we haven't gotten real far.
You can look at right now, but you got to look at the final step, too, because
Yeah, and we will. We'll
all the
get there.
preparation in the world is no good if you miss the final step.
And you're going to love it.
Right. The goal is to get...
You're going to love it.
Thank you, Jack. The goal is to obviously present something that the town and town meeting can buy into.
Thanks for your
That's really what we're trying
comments,
to
Jack.
do or accomplish. So we'll move on to the next item, which is community outreach.
Yeah, so I was going to ask one of you to kind of
Yeah, I'm
relay
happy to.
what we talked about a couple days ago and what our steps are going forward. So this is exactly kind of an example of, we've had a working group meeting, and now the working group members can present to the committee as opposed to listening to Terry.
Who from the committee was there?
I was there, and so was Melissa. So, I mean, again, we went through as far as, you know, what the next, what the schedule is going to be, you know, what the cadence. So we are planning on doing some in-person tours sometime between January and February, as you can see on this. We want to make sure that everyone knows that the next working group meeting is going to be held on, what's the date? Is it January 5th?
Community event or working group?
Next community event.
February 12th.
Is going to be February 12th.
Is it held?
That should be in person one again, I believe.
Yep.
Hybrid. That one, I think the goal of that one was more community input. I think the last one, the goal was community listening.
Community listening.
And then
right.
this February one, I think will be in a much, we're going to have another video out in between potentially tours prior to that meeting and during, maybe that night. But that one would be more of a listening session.
Right.
Is that going to be in the auditorium?
Yes.
Yes. And I don't know, did Eric reach out to you to try and push the video to be finished in time for town meeting in January?
Which video?
The one that we're,
Next
the
video.
the next video?
Eric? That Eric?
Yes, that Eric.
What's town meeting day?
Talked about a lot of things, but I don't know.
So there's 2 different videos that are happening. We are scheduled to have an interview with BCAT next week, Chris, myself, and Eric. And so that video will be done shortly. We intend to, when I say we, I'm talking about Chris and his team are going to create a video that basically goes through options and an overview of how we got to where we are and an explanation of what those options are, so that people can get a video content of it that's in a manageable bite size that folks can listen to it and take it in. And then we're going to utilize Thought Exchange, which is a platform that the district owns, to basically open that up so that people can provide feedback to all those options, as well as asking them pointed questions. You know, sometimes when you set up a survey, if you frame the questions one way, you come up with the result that you want. That's not the intention of Thought Exchange. It's meant to be much more of an open, you can provide your feedback, your opinion, and then you can see what other people's opinions are, and it kind of generates kind of the will of the people that are participating. If folks don't participate, well, then we don't record their input. But we'll use that, combine that with these in-person tours that we'll offer, and ideally have students lead members of the public around, because that often is much more powerful than going with Chris or myself or Rachel or David, because the student tells the people what their perception and what they live in the school now, which can be very powerful. And then what we will do is we'll have that community event on February 12th, and then we have an SBC meeting the following night where we'll, kind of present all that feedback that comes through Thought Exchange and impressions of the tours that we've had leading up to that. So that's our plan.
What does anyone know off the top of their head the next town meeting date? What's the date?
I'm trying to find it.
Pardon me?
January 27th.
27th, okay, so the 15th.
So yes, it will be.
The 15th will be, I wanted to make sure that this video that we're working on with all the different plans, I wanted to make sure it was available for town meeting, because I think the last video we did at town meeting was very impactful and informative, and I just want to make sure we have something like that again for the next town meeting. All right, so I think that's good enough for community outreach. Next item is any other topics anyone wants to talk about that weren't anticipated? Yes.
I have one. So as folks that were involved with Fox Hill, this next point will be very known to you. So a project's going to have a delivery method as to how it's going to get constructed. And I think at Fox Hill, it's design, bid, build. Here, I don't think with whatever option we choose that is going to be the delivery method that we would recommend. Chris and I have already discussed this. We would pursue CM at risk.
Yeah.
But we will present that to the group, the pros and cons, but I'm telling you, that's what our recommendation is going to be. If you go that route, you have to file something with the Office of the Inspector General. It's paperwork. It doesn't bind you to something. Our team is going to start that process because there's 60 days that you can't do anything. It's just, I should have included in the schedule. I wanted to make sure that folks were just aware of it. We'll cover it in the next meeting with a full presentation on the benefits and cons of employing either of those delivery methods. But just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, Ms. Monaco?
Yeah, we did that with Marshall Simons, so some of us are very familiar with it.
Great.
Okay. Ms. Simon?
Other topics, I have some concerns that we obviously aren't going to discuss tonight, but I want to throw out for people to think about. I sent an email to some people earlier, and I just want to make sure that everybody who's making these decisions is thinking about it, knows. Some of the issues got mentioned tonight, but I'm just going to review. I think we need more information. Before we heard from the neighbors tonight, I was concerned about, so what are the real noise aspects of putting the stadium over here? And it's not, I'm not the engineer, but architects and engineers know how that works. How do you direct light so it doesn't go into a neighborhood? And the way we were explained this potential stadium was actually dug halfway into the hill, which I think would mitigate some of the noise. What else could be done, would be done, those kinds of things. Again, those of us who heard it last time know that the parking would be addressed by the way the stadium would be built. So those kinds of information I'd like you to report before we make final, before I could support something. I'd want to know what kind of mitigation would be possible. Might not be satisfactory, but I want to know what they are. I want that information. I also want to know how the hours that the stadium is used outside of school hours, because I know that there's different sports at different hours and some nights and some not nights, so I wanted to know exactly how many days of the year and nights of the week and those kinds of things.
Can I pause you for a second there?
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to that, you're talking about the use of Varsity Field.
Right.
It's 7 days a week, both in the spring and the summer. The spring and the fall. So those sports seasons. Generally on weekdays, it's from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock, unless it's in the fall where it's darker, 'cause I think they stop at 7.
Okay.
Does that sound about right? That's what I wrote down. There's 2 different times for it. And then on Saturdays, they typically play in the mornings from about 8 to noon in both of those seasons. And then on Sundays, I'm thinking this is rec, like youth stuff. They have a morning session from typically 8 to 12, and then another one from 5 to 7. So varsity field is used frequently.
But again, I think, what people are thinking about noise, right? Even though those sports are taking place, like the football games, for example, there are announcements and there's a bigger crowd and there's more noise. You go to a soccer game, you got to look at the scoreboard to see what, half the time to figure out what's going on, because there's not a lot, there's not anyone announcing anything or anything like that. So I think it's kind of like maybe more the noise factor than how busy it is.
So what Terry just said is part of the
It's both, but
information.
It is.
And there's other information.
Underneath, and that's the first I've heard of that, because of the impact of this whole area and the closest to the wetlands too. Flooding is a major concern.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I could finish, I want to know if the stadium was built here, how would the flooding issues be? That's another area. And if we did 10 Corporate Drive, one of my questions was the cost of the land in the building, and that's being looked at. But another, what would the cost of a pedestrian bridge over Cambridge Street be? I might want to know what that is. Would the state allow us to build a pedestrian bridge? I assume they would, but they'd probably have requirements of how tall it had to be. So I would, before I decided on Corporate Drive, I'd want information on that. I also think they finished the ANRAD, although maybe they haven't finished it, but
We're hoping for a determination
tonight. So again, that's option N1, this long skinny building over where the student parking lot is now. It may be that that building is designed, would that need to be changed? So that's another. And I also, you said it's a quarter mile right now from the high school to the varsity field. So I'd like to know what the other distances are for, like if we build a Corporate Drive, how far would the parking lot be from?
As the crow flies, it's 0.2 of a mile.
No, I don't want, no, I want to know how.
So it's 0.9 miles.
0.9 miles.
To go from the
Okay,
front
so
entrance.
I don't need all the answers tonight.
So part of this entire process and the criteria, all of that is part of this process. So we do intend to address all of those questions.
Good.
I think we try and answer some of that within the context of the presentations. I think you'll find that in the working group sessions, raising the things that maybe are impacting you or are most interest, that's the opportunity. I wouldn't suggest doing it in this forum, because I don't think it's productive, where we can do it in a session, document it, and when it comes, like the pedestrian bridge, I don't know. I've never done a pedestrian bridge over a state highway. My guess is Mass DOT is involved. My guess is the town is involved. My guess is that it's a very complicated, long process. We're investigating it. In terms of the cost, that's part of the design development cost that will end up going to estimators if we go down that path.
Okay, I have not been part of all those meetings, so I didn't know that was already being considered, and I didn't get a response to my email, so I didn't know that was already being considered.
So can I address that for 1 second, Martha? So part of the issue that we have there is that because of open meeting law, you cannot just selectively choose who you want to send questions to, because I can't respond to that because it's a violation of open meeting law.
Okay,
so
that's fair. That's why I'm bringing up.
Yep, no, and I'm glad you have. So what questions like that should all be, and this is not just for you, this is for the benefit of the entire committee, is you need to go through the chair.
You want anything added, right? And we'll add it to the meeting if it's something specific you want added.
So
And my other category is, so there's information and research that I feel we still don't have yet, which may already be in the works, but I don't know that. So those are some examples. And the other area is, I think that it's important for us to do forward thinking, and we need to look ahead, and we addressed, issues like, where would we put preschools if we needed more room? Where would we expand? Things like that. Another would be, we had a long conversation about enrollment. I think we did okay. But if in 20 to 30 years we needed an expansion, is that being included in the thinking and the planning and the designing? If we build N1 along the wetlands, would there be room for an expansion, for example, versus if we build at 10 Corporate Drive, is there room for an expansion? Maybe adding a third floor, but then you need to build the building so that the third floor there's structurally strong enough. Another is future flooding issues. So we're having the ANRAD is addressing the issues around flooding, and option N1, but is it also addressing possible flooding options at NC4 and NC5, the options at at Varsity Field? Is that, so that I wanted to know, is that being looked at? And then future flooding. So ANRAD is what are the conditions now, but we also know that climate change is happening. We've already, the globe has already warmed a lot, and it's going to keep doing it, probably faster. Do we know if this has some flexibility? How are we planning when we make a choice about where to locate a building on this property, which doesn't have a lot of great options? And then I also want to, before we make any other eliminations, I know we want to move forward. I'm excited to move forward, but I don't want to eliminate any other options until we know if they're net zero possible, if they are no fossil fuel possible. The town does have a policy that we shouldn't be building fossil fuel public buildings. We all know that the buildings create some of the biggest carbon emissions. So I just feel like there's still things that we as a committee need to be deciding and thinking about, not just, does this look better or not look better, as well as is it adjacent to high school students who can use it as internships. So I will, can I enter this into the minutes, or?
It'll be part of the minutes.
It'll be part of the minutes. I think I addressed all the issues that I wanted to, and I just, look forward to hearing more of this information and hearing more conversation about future planning, and looking forward, not just, we all want it to be as less expensive as possible, because people don't want to raise their own taxes, and it will have to go to a debt exclusion. But we also don't want to save money because it's a little cheaper to go with this version or that version, and then in 20 years we have to retrofit the building because we need to meet other emissions requirements or flooding requirements. So I think we can't be short-sighted with our cost. The cost-benefit analysis is a big piece, and I know that comes later, but I think these are all important issues that we all need to keep thinking about when we look at these criteria and such. So thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Anyone else? Okay. Any other public comment?
Yes. Online.
Online.
Oh, Barbara.
Hi.
Barbara LaRue.
Barbara LaRue?
Hi, thank you so much. Barbara LaRue, I'm here representing Planning Board. The two members from Planning Board that are assigned to this subcommittee were not able to come tonight, so I'm sitting in for them. So it's possible that I may raise issues that they have already raised to you. I apologize if that's the case. I've been taking notes, and I did have some comments and a number of questions for you. The first thing I wanted to say is I really want to strongly urge you to schedule a meeting with planning staff and the planning board chair to discuss all the plans that are still in the running here before you narrow them down further. You need to understand things like the permitting requirements and the parking requirements and zoning needs. The Corporate Drive location may require a zoning change. And of course, you all should set up a separate meeting with conservation. It sounds like you may already have that covered, but just wanted to mention that. I have some concerns about some of the plans. The corporate drive plan, I understand it's very exciting and it offers some really cool, innovative things, but I have some real concerns about inadequate parking at that location. I also think that you should be prepared for the neighbors in the condo development that's right off of Corporate Drive to have some very big concerns regarding traffic. They had some pretty steep protests to the apartment building that went in there, which has generated very little traffic, but the high school is going to generate a lot more traffic than that. They fought the apartment building pretty hard, so I think you need to be prepared that they're going to have concerns about this. I just want you to be aware of that. I thought at the beginning of this meeting that the idea of putting varsity field where the high school is now was off the table, but now at the end of the meeting, it sounds like maybe it's still on the table. So with that in mind, I wanted to say, again, you need to meet with planning because there's some issues with that you need to be aware of. We would have some very serious concerns about this underground parking structure. It may require blasting, which could damage the existing parts of your building that you want to keep using, and it could even cause damage to neighboring residential homes. So that's a huge concern. The other thing that I don't know is whether or not you have included the cost of structured parking in your cost estimates. The cost of structured parking is extremely high. For above ground structured parking, you can average about $30,000 per space, and underground would probably be more expensive. And also that rough figure is for regular developments. Because this is a school development, you probably are going to have to pay union wages, so it could be even more. So I think you have to figure that in. Maybe you already have. I just want to make sure that you're aware of how very expensive structured parking can be. There's also neighborhood concerns that we on planning board would have to consider if you came forward with this plan or any plan, really. We're going to have to be considering the neighborhoods that are nearby. So it's really important that you come and meet with planning staff very soon. With the Fox Hill project, it came a little too late, and that made things a little more difficult. It will go more smoothly if you come now, so that we're involved with that before you narrow down your options any further. Then just sort of another comment about the website. I found the website very difficult to navigate. The document that you have to download to get to the drawings of the different options is almost 500 pages long. That's not user-friendly. And with a project like this, where you're going to be coming to the community asking for that kind of money, I think the community outreach is so important, and that website is crucial. I don't know why our website is the way it is. I know that I've seen the Lexington building website. It's so easy to navigate. It's so easy to find the information that you need, and ours should be the same. We're asking for a really big thing from the residents of Burlington here, $300 million. They need to be able to find all the information they want on the website. The community outreach that you're doing is fantastic. I fully support that, but you need to have that online as well. The last comment I have is I'm a little bit concerned about some of the scheduling that you mentioned. The community input event is going to be February 12th, but you said you're going to be working on your preferred schematic report in March. That doesn't leave a whole lot of time for you to incorporate what you learn at that community input event. And the schedule seems really, really tight to me. So I just hope that you're looking at that, and I want to make sure that you have all of that lined up if you really want to go to town meeting in September, because this looks very tight to me. Again, another reason to come to the planning department now. So I'm probably over my 3 minutes, but I wanted to try and get all of that in. I don't expect any answers tonight. If you have any questions for me, though, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes. Actually, we want to do the next meetings first. We'll go through that. Next meeting is January 9th at 6:30. And next community event, number 2, is February 12th. And the time will be to be determined. And then the one after that is our meeting again back here, February 13th at 6:30. And again, these are posted on the website. So now if you'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and I'm just going to do an all in favor. I'm going to take a vote. Aye. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.